Hi, my name's Susan, and I'm a full stack developer who has mostly worked with the React framework for the front end and Ruby on Rails for the back end, both as an internal service and as a full-fledged application. So for a scalable front end architecture, I would use the ViewComponents framework because with Rails 8, it is now has built-in support for it. They allowed you to build smaller shareable components, for example, a button that you can share between different other components. So then you have less code to write. Additionally, because it's all written in Ruby and it's all running on your back end, you can do end-to-end testing without having to do front-end tests and back-end tests. And so it simplifies the process of development as well. So you can get end-to-end testing in Rails, and you get one code base instead of two. So there's an additional benefit of that is there's less context switching for the developer going between two different languages or three different languages. You also have component reusability that I've mentioned, enabling faster development. And when you couple that with Hotwire and Turbo, you can end up with the same kind of responsiveness that you get out of a single page JavaScript application that you would do in React and Rails, without the added complexity of managing a separate front-end application or code base. So for refactoring, it's best done as you go, although it can be hard sometimes to know when to stop and refactor. So you can end up with very large models sometimes, particularly because with Rails applications, there's a saying, skinny controller, fat model. So meaning you should not put business logic into the controller, you should put it into the model. But when they said that, they didn't anticipate really large architectures with a lot of business model relating to one particular entity in the database. So what I've experienced in the past is you end up with these massive model classes that carry a lot more business logic than they should. They should just talk to the database. That's their role as a model. So what I've done is I've created service components in one case where we actually had an internal service, and anytime somebody needed to do something with the back end or do business logic, they would call method within the service, and it was always the same method to do any kind of updates on the model, to go through the model to update the back end. And as well, I've used something called the actor pattern. So we used interactors, so whenever you had to do some business logic, it was broken down into different interactors, which could also be shared between different branches of business logic, and those interactors then talk to the model that then talks to the data. So refactoring, the first step though is to make sure that you have good test coverage before you do any big changes like that, taking a large chunk of code out of the model and putting it into a new class or a service object or an actor component. So if you don't have the right test coverage, you should have to build it really before you actually change anything. And so on to the next question. To integrate with any external system, you really have to build an external service layer. So that does if it's HTTP, I'm assuming it's a REST service or something that you would call an API, you would have to build an HTTP component that communicates with the other service. The tricky part there is if it's an accounting service, then you really need to make sure your data is accurate, up to date. So I think that I was going to go back to like Hotwire and Turbo, which have these actual sockets that connect the data, so it updates the page instantly, and just like JavaScript does. It has a little Ajax component that calls the back end and just updates that one little piece of the front end. So you don't get a page refresh every time. And it makes the web page really responsive. Similarly, you probably want to have little microservices or small calls that update the data as you go. So one way I've done this is we've used an Apache Flink stateful functions. And so rather than having the data in the external service and then another bit of data held by the other application that you're currently using, you have all the data within the state within the Apache Flink. And that allows you to have a single source of truth, even though it's a distributed application. And if you don't have that, you have to find a way to roll back your transactions so that they are you don't have the wrong data on your service. I hope that answers the questions. Thank you. Bye.